We left off the other day I said we would pick up in chapter 10, the dark night. Not quite. Different night. Very not the dark night. And we get this little description of him on page 68 and top of 69 about the dark night, or as he is here, actually, the last night of the ENGL. He thought little of the snow because, in truth, he didn't think much about anything. He didn't have much of internal life. Indeed, he didn't have much internal anything. Why? Because he's a hollow man. But could you say the same thing about the gunner? I mean, yes, the gunner is a hollow man. But does the gunner not have any internal life? Does he not have any thoughts? I mean, he talks to George about life and death. He talks to George about honor. So we go on, and the knight meets up with whatever this thing is, and cries out, page 70 in the middle, "Who goes there?" The dark horse did not speak, but the knight heard the answer and said, okay, the dark horse, the end of the previous chapter, was called what?
The nightmare.
Yeah, it wasn't the previous chapter. It was one of the earlier ones. The nightmare, okay? So the nightmare asks the last knight, "What manner of thing are you?" He says, "I am fate's champion, the last knight of the ENGL. And no manner of thing may stop me on my quest, so stand aside." Dark horse keeps coming. "What is your quest?" Why? Because he's a knight, right? Knights have quests. I mean, this is romantic literature. Not love, but the other kind. "I seek the boy maker, the bearer of the light." Why? "He has chosen the hard way. I must fight him. I must kill him if I can. So must I kill any who come between me and my purpose. Stand aside." I don't want to stop you. The nightmare says, "Then stand aside. I want to be you." Well, that's a little different. Probably the last knight wasn't thinking of that. And with that, the dark horse walked straight onto the sharp point of the lance, and as it did so, the knight's horse shuddered and bucked and turned to flee, and the knight was twisted around in his saddle as he kept his tenacious, unstoppable grip on the haft of his lesson. And so he saw exactly what happened as it happened, and what he saw was this. The lance pierced the dark horse and turned back black as the darkness leached into it. The knight could not tug the weapon free, and his horse became frozen, as a tendril of darkness dropped off the lance and poured inside the horse through one of the curving gaps in its metal plates. And very quickly, the last knight becomes the dark night. Okay? Chapter 11, cold light of morning. Where are they? Well, Spout sat on top of the arch on Hyde Park Corner watching things. They are almost back at the beginning of the first book. This is where George first meets the gunner. Corner of Hyde Park Corner. Okay? And Edie's asleep. George wakes her up. Dictionary Johnson shows up. And they meet Johnson again. And Edie now meets the clocker, whom she did not meet before when they stopped and paused at the church on the Strand. And I'm going to skip a couple pages, go on to 77. Edie explains, "I just want to find my mom." She pulled out her mother's heartstone earring, still shining. She's still alive, see? I thought she wasn't, but she is. "Edie," says George, "might be a bit bigger than that." In other words, I understand why you want to find your mom and all, but we've got bigger fish to fry. You know, that's kind of down low on my to-do list. If we can't stop what's happening, it won't matter whether your mother where your mother is or why you thought she was dead. There won't be any when. What do you mean? Saying there won't be any when doesn't make any sense. Well, at that point, George ought to just kind of look around and go, does any of this make any sense? The clocker says actually makes complete sense. Precise definition of predicament. Time out of joint. Stopped dead. No when, no then. In other words, they are what? Outside time. Just now. Imperative, put time back in joint, or all stuck here frozen in time forever. How do you put time in joint? Well, in Hamlet, because Hamlet says, alas that I was born. Okay? Because time is out of joint and I must put it back. Well, Hamlet put time back in joint, so to speak, by killing his uncle who killed his father. Okay? And a variety of other people along the way. Clocker says, when Edie asks, how do you put time in joint? Sounds like a big job. What do? Find time, kick it, and bang it on the outside? Button you push, reboot, reset, No, have to go to Queen of Time. She will know. Okay, you go off and do that. George says, Edie, why are you so angry? We're all in this together. Who's the we?
The them, the spits.
Edie, George, and the spits. We don't have time. We're all in this together. Last night you were happy, now She what? What's she thinking about?
Her mother.
Her mother. Okay. And it's snowing heavily. And the gunner says, page 79, another snowfall like this, we won't be able to move at all. So George says, okay, here's the plan. Notice, George is taking control. George is in the lead. And yet, who else is with this group? Well, you've got the gunner.
The officer.
You got the officer.
The queen.
The queen with the two daughters. This is Boadicea, who defeated the Romans before she was ultimately defeated. Okay? George says, Clocker's going to go off find Queen of Time. He says if there's anything to be done, she'll know what it is. You, me, and the queen here, Boadicea, we're going to go with the officer and the gunner. We're going to go see the Sphinxes. Edie, really? How helpful have they been? Why have I got to go back to the Sphinxes? They don't exactly like me, do you? Queen, that's why we need you. Glints are the only things we know of that the Sphinxes are wary of. And when things are awry or need clarifying, it's the Sphinxes that have the answers. Okay? And what do they see? Page 80 and following. There's the walker's bird, the big black raven. Okay? But Johnson's cat is after it. A gunner. Page 81. It's the walker's bloody bird. Either the cat kills it or I do. He cocks his pistol. Edie, no, don't kill it. Dictionary tells his cat to leave it alone, and the raven lay on its back and looked at the girl. Part of its natural instinct was to flip over and fly away, but the raven had seen everything and forgotten none of it. What is this raven again? It's Mugen, isn't it?
Munin.
Yeah, because there's, I can't remember if it's got one N or two. Munin and Mugen are Odin's, I was going to say Thor's, two ravens. Memory and, this is memory.
Wisdom.
And I just reread Neil Gaiman's retelling of Norse mythology, which is really good, but he doesn't include this. It's either wisdom or thought, which are kind of the same. Right? It have seen everything, forgotten nothing. One of the things about remembering the past is that it can all get a bit stale. What it was particularly interested in was the opposite of the past. The bits it didn't yet know about or remember. That is, the present and the future. So it ignored the instinct to fly and waited to see what the glint would do. What she did was reach forward and move the feathers at its neck. And now the raven was so interested and didn't move a pin feather. Edie, it's still alive, but there's blood. She pulls her hand back in surprise. Says, no, take that back. It's not blood. It's a thread. The queen, don't touch it. It's part of the old magic. Red thread to bind, red thread to catch dreams, red thread to make the wearer not what she seems. I've never heard that before, but apparently it's old. It must be part of the binding spell the walker put on the bird. The queen continued, meddling with the old magic, if you don't know what you're doing, is a very, very, and Edie bites through the thread. Very bad idea. So the thread, the queen believes, binds the raven to the walker. It's the collar. And what does Edie do? Takes the collar off. What's Edie thinking?
That she's just freeing the raven from the walker.
She frees it. It removes it. It removes its binding. Okay? So, chapter 12. Notice it's not daylight everywhere in London. It's daylight where the gunner and George and Edie and the queen are. But you go a little bit further east from where they are, because bear in mind they're at Hyde Park Corner. And what's it like? I think we've got time. Let me pull this up. Really? I don't know if I can pull this up. I have to remember my password. Nope, wrong password. Password again. Try one more. Nope. Okay. I was going to pull up the map to show you where they're going. So we've got this other soldier, an officer, an old soldier, and they see this fog wall. And there's firemen. We're going to skip all that, actually. Yeah, we'll just skip that. Go on to 13. We're back with Edie and the queen. Why did you do that? The queen asks. Edie didn't know why she'd done it, not in the way she could explain. Her mind was still half jumbled with sleep, a tangle of too much exhaustion, too many maybes. Maybe she'd done it because she had to, maybe because it felt like the thing to do. Maybe she knew what it was like to be imprisoned. Although maybe she wasn't kind, maybe she was just clever. Maybe she'd done it because she knew the moment she felt it that the walker had placed the thread there, and she instinctively wanted to undo everything he'd ever done. Then again, maybe she just liked birds. In other words, awful lot of reasons. A bird saved me. What bird? In my dream. Remember the dream? Edie at the beach? And the owl saves her? Look, I don't know. An owl saved me in my dream, and I don't think about it much. It just seemed like the thing to do. Wait, queen, wait, stop. An owl? An owl watched over? Yeah, a gray owl. Andraste, or Arian Rod, says the other. Who? Different names for the same white lady, the moon goddess. You see, you are wrong. You're not on your own. No one ever is. Why the moon goddess? Goddess of chastity or virginity. What's the moon goddess doing? Kind of, if we read into the queen's words.
Protecting Edie.
Protecting Edie. It wasn't Edie who stopped her stepfather. It was the moon goddess. A goddess came to you in a dream and you think it's nothing? I don't believe in goddesses or dreams or magic. Should she believe in magic?
Definitely.
Does she even need to believe in magic?
No.
I mean, she's talking to a statue. I've walked past this statue, it's got to be at least 50 times. Never seen it move before. Okay? I believe in me, and what I can see, and what I can do. And yet, from George's perspective, what Edie can do is what? It's pretty magical. You touch a piece of stone and you go back and experience what that stone has experienced in time. And even what George can do is magical. He goes in an underground underpass, touches the walls, and they come alive. He doesn't even have to touch the walls, and they come alive. What about your power? What about your glinting? Not magic, is it? It's just what I do. Yeah, but, if you're Harry Potter, it's just what he does, too. And, Dudley would say that's magic. I can feel the past in stones like dogs can hear high-pitched noises human can't. In other words, Edie's saying it's what for her?
An ability.
Yeah, it's just a natural ability. It's like, Usain Bolt can run 100 meters faster than anybody else. It's just what he's born able to do. It's just a thing. George, you don't make sense, Edie. After all this happened. You can't. Yes, I can. I can do what? And at that point, Hodge leaps for the raven. Edie stops him. And the queen says, you don't believe in goddesses? Bottom 91. No. Or gods? Asked one of the goddesses. Asked one of the daughters. No. Okay. Boadicea and her daughters are from the 1st century A.D. They are Celts. All right? They believe in a whole bunch of gods, a whole pantheon of gods. Even if they weren't Celts, if they were Romans, a whole pantheon of gods. In other words, they say, there are things bigger and more powerful than us. And we ought to have a little bit of humility towards those things. Sorry, I believe in me, and what I can see and what I can touch. That's it. Does she believe in her heartstone?
Yeah.
What happens when she's without it?
She starts wilting.
Yeah, she's like a battery-operated teddy bear when the battery goes dead. She shuts down. Queen, okay, fine. You see that raven on your shoulder? The raven is now sitting on her. Yeah. There was another god, a one-eyed god, a hanged god. Oh, that's right, but you don't believe in gods. He was called Odin. He came to this island with the Vikings. Okay? The Vikings came in 793. They stayed around for a few hundred years. They eventually became English. They married into the Anglo-Saxons. He had 2 birds. One was called Thought, Mugen, I'm pretty sure. The other was Memory, Edie. And, what's your point? They were ravens. So, big deal. This old guy had birds, ravens. So I suppose you don't believe in that God either. Nope. Interesting. Complicated. But you've got his bird on your shoulder. George, it's the walker's bird. It's Memory, the queen says. The raven whose name, is Moonin. The walker was a mage before he was cursed by the stone. A mage, a wizard, a magician. He enslaved the bird with a spell that appears to have been broken when your friend broke the red thread and made the bird her own. In other words, if the walker wasn't angry before... Yes?
I remember, I think it was in the first book, that the raven thought itself as a phoenix, because it would die and come back to life. And I remember it being called Phoenix in the book. So is a phoenix just...
Well, I don't remember that at all. Okay.
All right.
Keep going.
Is it just a name for the ability it has to die and come back?
No, a phoenix is an actual specific bird according to Greek mythology.
Yeah, okay. But I'm just saying, does it apply to birds that can die?
Well, I think the raven obviously is thinking kind of like, hey, I'm phoenix-like. Because I die and I come back to life. I die and I come back to life. Okay? Edie says, it's not my bird, it's free to go. She kind of does this. And the bird doesn't leave. It has seen everything, says the queen, and forgotten nothing. It certainly has seen enough to know that a favor left unthanked and not repaid will always come back to haunt you. There's a little bit of morality being taught here. In other words, she's kind of telling Edie, the bird knows what that Edie apparently doesn't. You say thank you when somebody does something nice to or for you. It knows how the world balances accounts. I think Moonin is with you until you are done with it, child, like it or not. She says, whatever. Page 93 at the bottom. Edie, George thought, may not have believed in the old myths, but she suddenly looked like she just stepped right out of one, straight out of one. Why? Because he looks at Edie in the previous paragraph as the gust whipped her long dark hair into a rippling flag behind her. So her hair, it's not just blowing like straight back here, it's spread up behind her. Silhouetted against the snow, lit by the wind-kindled blaze, wearing the black fur coat with the raven perched on her shoulder. She doesn't look modern at all. She looks like something out of time. And the queen's also looking at her. She took a deep breath. George wasn't sure what she was going to shout, whether she was going to shout or hit her. Hold on. Yeah. But the queen does neither. She takes a deep breath and goes down on one knee so that she's eye to eye with Edie, because this is a big statue, and grips her chin firmly. So the queen gets down on her knees so she's face to face with Edie and grabs her by the chin. Why? She's not going to let her turn her head away. She's going to force her to listen to what she has to say. The goddess that you don't believe in, and the magic you are so sure doesn't exist, had power on this island so long ago that the island itself went by another name. It was Albion, the white land, the white of the moon. That is, by the way, true. It was called Albion before it was England. It was Albion before it was Britain. Okay? The goddess had the power of the moon. She took the shape of an owl, the moon bird. Owls and certain other creatures, like the hare, were sacred to her. And as soon as the queen mentioned the hare, Edie knew she had to stop. In other words, Edie knows where this is going, and she doesn't want to hear the rest. Look, it's all rubbish to me. Sorry, it means a lot to you. I can see that. In other words, I'm trying to be open-minded and inclusive. You know, I like how you can, you celebrate the religion you have. But that's not my world. Why? Well, because Boadicea lived 2,000 years ago. Edie's saying, in my world, you don't see many gods and goddesses, do you? In her mind's eye, she was unable to stop the replay of the dream, the bit where the hare watched her from the ridgeline on top of the pebble slope. Remember the pebble slope that she's fighting to try to get up? I just want to find my mom. It's not about gods or old England or Albion, see? It's about me thinking she was dead and now having a chance to find her. We're not told exactly how old Edie is. She's about George's age, maybe a year or so younger or older. She's been without her mom for a long time, and she's been living on her own, on the streets. Why does Edie want to find her mom so much?
She just wants her mom to take care of her again.
To fix it. To fix my life. The queen opens her mouth, but Edie goes on. Because she was only telling half the truth. You do the same if you were me. That is it because Edie's only telling half the truth, or the queen's only telling half the truth? And if they were me, so would your daughters. They'd rip the world apart looking for you, wouldn't they? Queen's unable to speak. That is, Edie's right. About this, Edie is right. So the officer says, time to go. We need to get to the Sphinxes. So Johnson and Clocker go off to find Queen of Time. They know where she is. She's on the side of a department store on Oxford Street. Okay? Bottom of 96. George is walking beside Edie. Queen's walking beside George. And she kind of grabs him by the elbow and tugs him back so she can talk to him alone. The glint may not wish to hear it from me, boy, but the truth of things is this. There is something in you, one or both of you, something that has scraped through to the forgotten layers of old England, before it was England, even when it was Albion. Whatever is happening, whatever has followed you here in your quest, is connected with that wilder world, the world of the ancient magic. She's talking about the thing that came through the mirrors. It goes deeper than I can fathom, but in the depths are black things that are calling to that girl. And if she listens to them and forgets the light, she is lost. And I would have no more girls lost because I failed to speak out and warn them. George looks at Edie. The raven's not looking at him. We are in a place I have never been, boy. Okay, now keep in mind, she's how old?
2,000.
Yeah, she's supposed to be because she's Boadicea. The statue itself is less than 100. Okay? But because she represents Boadicea, she has Boadicea's memory, so to speak. In other words, she's seen 2,000 years of history in London. We are in a place I've never been, boy. And though I know nothing of it, I do know it will be darker before it gets better. Edie, if it gets better. In other words, Edie's listened to everything the Queen just said. And that's when they hear the screaming. Okay? So, Spout goes and helps the boy from Piccadilly Circus. This is an archer within like a gyroscope in the center of a fountain. And let's see here. Spout gets attacked by gargoyles. The gunner shoots at them. I don't think there's anything in that chapter I want to talk about. We pick up with the end of chapter 15, Anteros, the name of the boy archer. Page 112. Okay, Spout was being attacked, and then suddenly the attackers leave. And George asks, what was that all about? The Queen says the darkness is calling the taints to itself. Edie, not that. We get that the darkness is a bad thing. He meant the other thing. The now you know thing you said to him, to the boy, about not being able to hear the call or being able, what was that about? Well, he's human-shaped, says the gunner, but he's not a real person. There's spits and taints. Yeah, he didn't mention this before. And then there's the ones in between. We're spits because we're made to be real people, right? Taints is made to be frightening imaginary creatures, yeah? And in between, well, the Queen says, in between there are the ones we're not sure of. You're not sure because they're not sure, says Edie? That is, those statues don't know whether they're supposed to be human or non-human? And she thinks of little tragedy. Gunner, yeah. Boy didn't know, but he heard the call and he refused it. And so now I guess we all know which side of the line he's on. That is,
On the spit
he's
side.
taking the side of Spitz and what it cost him to find out. Queen, I think we're all going to be asked to pay that price. So, The Gathering, chapter 16. George says, 115, talking with Edie, what I was going to say was, I wonder what would have happened if I had put that broken dragon's head on the stone. You mean if you hadn't stayed because of me? You'd have gone back to your lair of London, wouldn't have remembered anything. Or known anything about any of this. George, it's not about you. Not always, anyways. He had woken with an itch on his upper arm, and that itch had now become a sort of dull pain, the kind you get from being punched hard. He didn't need to look, because now those two, okay, the third line, the last one, is moving slowly toward his shoulder, marking the duel he had yet to fight, before he's done with the Knicking Guild's challenge. He'd forgotten about it as he slept that night. And he goes on, bottom of that page, 116, and says, I didn't mean trying to make eye contact through the long sweep of dark hair she'd let fall forward. I meant I was wondering if this is all getting worse because of me. Okay, what did he just say? It's not all about you. Now he seems to be blind. It's all about me. Okay? It's my fault. She doesn't turn her head. The only response George gets is from the raven, who is riding Edie's far shoulder and had him fixed with its unblinking, shiny black bead eyes over the top of her head. As George is talking, the bird's just looking right at him. He didn't trust the bird. He says, look, what? The gunner interrupts him. Says it doesn't matter whose fault it is, but if it was, I'd say, if I hadn't broken my oath and let the walker take me, we wouldn't be in this trouble now. So the gunner's saying, okay, you want to say the problem's your fault, you want to say the problem's your fault, but I'm saying the problem's my fault. So stow it, or start making me feel all guilty and wobbly, and then I'll be needing one of these shrinks of yours, and then where will we be? What's the gunner mean by all that? He's saying you're sitting here and whining, moaning, complaining over whose fault is this, achieves what?
Nothing.
Doesn't get them any closer to their goal. What's their goal?
To stop this thing.
To stop, defeat the dark. Knowing who caused it is irrelevant. Stopping it is what's relevant. Okay? So they get to the Sphinxes, page 125. Well, take that back. They get to the Sphinx. And Edie asks at the top of the page, where's your sister? And she asks that in response to the Sphinx saying, I'm not angry at you, child. I am out of sorts. Where's your sister? And the gunner says, remember the call? Yes. And the Sphinx says, we both heard it. Only one of us went. Which one went?
The bad one.
Which means which one?
The one that had all the pockmarks.
The one that had the holes in it. Right? And this one says, I have always seen the human side of things, but my sister had become too taintish of late. I did not think we should go. I did not like the call. I do not like being told what to do. I don't like whatever it is that's doing the calling. As if we're dogs to be called to heel. George, what is calling? A voice from the outer dark. From the darkness before time. Well, what is the darkness before time? Is before time there only evil? Because that's kind of what the Sphinx implies. Something unknowably powerful and dangerous. Someone let it through. Not looking at George as she said this, but sometimes one cannot look at something just as pointedly as one cannot look at something. Okay, she's talking to George and Edie, but she's not looking at George. George kind of, however, feels like she is looking at him. Edie says, how do you know? How can you know all this if it's unknowable? Because it happened before. Page 126, the Sphinx says, the old darkness imprisoned in the London stone came from the same place long, long ago. It is only the strength and exact nature of the power of this new darkness that is unknowable, not the fact of its existence. This kinship explains why the two darknesses are working together. Edie, how? That is, one darkness is bad enough, but George, what's happened? Come on, tell me exactly. The new power comes from the outer darkness, a dimension beyond time, beyond and without time. Coming here, it sent a shock through all the layers, which has cut this layer of London off from the present and the future. Edie, now that's stupid because we're in the present. I mean, this is happening. Sphinx, no, it's not the real present. How do they know it's not the real present? Because there's no real effects of what they're doing on anything else, right? The real present is a living thing through which time flows from the past into the future, like blood through a vein. The now we are trapped in is disconnected from the present, cannot flow. And, like a vein through which the blood cannot pass, it will die. This is why they have to put time back into joint. Only problem is they still don't know how to do that. So, they continue talking, and let's see here. The queen comes in, and she says, page 128, there's talk about what to do. And the queen says, of everyone here, I am the only one ever to have destroyed this city. She did. She sacked Londinium with her Iceni tribes, Iceni. And having washed my anger in blood once, I shall not see it happen again. Okay? So a spit from the World War II RAF comes forward. And the queen says to the Sphinx, what can we do? That is, how do we stop this? Sphinx, wrong question. Okay. George found Edie, page 129, looking at him, something between despair and disgust. The raven's gone. And George says, I know. And in a sick lurch of his stomach, he realized, of course, that he did. He knew exactly what to do. He knew exactly what the question was. He knew there was only one person who could ask it. So, he stands up, and he puts his hand out and puts it on the Sphinx's paw. He looks into her eyes to find they were waiting for him. He couldn't say whether the smile was friendly or hostile. But he asks, what can I do? He's a master maker, right? We've already seen him fix spout. The Sphinx says, that's the right question. And then we leave them. We go off to Oxford Street, okay, where Johnson and Clocker look for the Queen of Time and find her, or go to her location. Chapter 19, we go back to the George and Edie and all of them. And somebody asks, what did you ask, boy? And the other Sphinx slinks up and says he asked what he could do about it. All right? So, 141. The good Sphinx asks the other Sphinx that has come back. What did you see then, sister? That is, where did you go off to? I saw all the taints, top of 141. I saw all the taints flocking to a great high tower in the east. I saw a new darkness atop that tower, a power that has taken an icy shape and brought the snow to fill the city. Excuse me. I heard its call as you did. I saw the great citadel in the sky it has made for itself, ringed by flying taints at the top, guarded at its foot by a horde of walking taints that could swallow this gathering in a heartbeat. In other words, you guys are toast. There are so many taints marshaled up against you. I saw the London stone cracked open, and I saw the old darkness walking again. I've seen statues shattered and destroyed in the city, spits that shall not walk again unless this war is won by turn of day. Unless we win, or you win, by midnight, there's an awful lot of statues that'll never walk again. George, what war? The war that we've always avoided, the war we've always feared, the war between the spits and the taints. And she looks at George and says, and you started it. E, no he didn't. Spits and taints have always been fighting. We've seen that. You know that. Well, they've been hostile to each other. But the boy threw the balance off. Would the dark power, 142, have come here had the boy not used his making hand to mar, to break the carving at the museum? If George hadn't knocked the dragon head off, he wouldn't have what? Started the dominoes falling. Make no mistake, it's his fault. George thinks, of course he was to blame. Gunner, load of tosh. It ain't his fault. He didn't know he was a maker. He still don't really know what it means. He can't be guilty if he didn't know what he was doing. Really? Try that in a court of law. Ignorance of the law is no defense against the charge. The Sphinx. Everything he's done to make it right led to the moment the door between the outer darkness and this world was opened and the new power got in. What didn't George do that he could have done to make it right? He didn't put the dragon's head on the heart stone. She's kind of implying. Edie, no. George, yes. So what do I do about it? Is that your question? Yes, that's my question. Okay, all right. So you get a riddle for an answer. 143. George, it's not time for games, is it? You said it. I'll answer your riddle, but only if you give me a straight answer. Straight as a die. Straight as an arrow. Straight as the road from cradle to grave. How straight is the road from cradle to grave? Not very. So the other Sphinx, the good Sphinx, cuts in. She doesn't allow the bad Sphinx to give the riddle. I am not amused when confused with the stony stare, with a lifeless head but lively hair. Wise men twist their faces from me or stand frozen in their attack. My nemesis outfaced me by the turning of his back. Okay? George has got to figure it out. Not amused? Well, Queen Victoria said that. There's a statue of Queen Victoria in front of Buckingham Palace. He says out loud, Queen Victoria? Is that your answer? No. The icy Sphinx says he did. He says that wasn't his answer. George, snakes? Edie, what? Lively hair, snakes. Who had snakes for hair? Medusa, the Gorgon. Edie, she doesn't know. Okay. So, George says, page 146, Medusa, hair made of living snakes, turn you to stone with their stare, had her head clean cut off by the Greek hero Perseus, carried away in a bag. The Sphinx says, good answer. Don't forget it. George is thinking, okay, how does my knowing a little bit of Greek mythology gonna fix things? 147. Two things to do, and by you they must be done, and in this order. That is, you have to do them in the right order. First, the old darkness must be defeated, pinned back into the stone from which it came. Okay, so what's that like? Putting the genie back in the bottle. Closing Pandora's box. Capturing the wind in your hands. Only you can do this, for only a maker can mend the rent in the stone through which it escaped. Only once the old darkness is vanquished can you have a chance of fighting the ice devil back into the black mirrors and putting time back in joint. How do you fight an ice devil? George is thinking. Take the way of the dragon by the knight of wood who lies all alone. You may find kin you can call your own. Find your kin, and within the hour the dead stone's tongue will be in your power. That is another riddle. Okay? What then, says George? You ask the dead stone. What stone? What dead stone? There's always a stone, George says. 147, bottom. As there's always a George and there's always a dragon. That is how the world and all that it is stays in balance. The dead stone is a stone corpse. No, I think I've given you enough answers. So he's got to find a stone corpse. What does that mean? A body turned to stone? A statue of a corpse? Where do you find statues of corpses? Well, in England, in churches. Why? Because that's where they have effigies of the dead person. So, 148. What if the Queen of Time succeeds in restarting time? That is, before I've taken care of all this. To attack the Ice Devil while its brother Darkness joins forces with it is suicide. You must have their power, and finishing your business with the old Darkness must happen first. What do you mean finish? He chose the hard way. And so there's Ariel, and she says, the boy's unfinished business. He's got his third and final duel. Yeah, says George, but that's what the Kinnickman does, not the old Darkness. And she goes, no. Now they're one and the same. So, theoretically, George can now do what? Kill two birds with one stone. The duel with the Kinnickman Guild and the one Darkness, the outer Darkness, if he can take care of it in the form of the night, that'll be the first part done. Okay? So George says, okay, bottom of 149. But if the Queen of Time tries to restart time without the old Darkness being dealt with, she'll die. Okay, so she'll die. And they've all, George is thinking, oh shoot. The Clocker and Johnson have already gone to try to do that. The Sphinx, then it's a suicide mission. You better go stop them, because if they succeed, nothing can come out good. Ariel says, when George says, I can catch them, but you have a duel to fight, boy, page 150. If the people who can start time again are killed because they tried before I fought that duel, then it's pointless anyway. Anger got him through the wave of fear that was threatening to rise up. I'll stop them jumping the gun. Then I'll get to the bloody duel. But how can you get there in time? Asked Edie. Notice, time is the one thing George has enough of. George, I can fly there. Ariel, I will not help you, boy. I cannot help you avoid or delay your fate. He says, I know. You've got one more riddle and one more question with the other Sphinx. He turns to Edie, the gunner, the queen. See if you can find out how to put the Ice Devil back in his box. I'll be back as soon as he can. Well, how's he going to fly there? Spout. Spout will fly me to warn the others. Okay. So, he flies, they get attacked. In chapter 20, because I'm skipping chapter 20, chapter 21, let's see here. I don't think there's anything there. Yep. Edie asks her question, 166. Excuse me. The gunner asks, where do we find this black mirror to banish the ice? The mirror sleeps on a bed neither here nor there, nor not beneath the ground nor under the air. It cannot be seen, not by you or me, but it can be found where the boy felt it to be. And we come to find out that's what? It's the bed of the river, the bed of the Thames. Okay? Chapter 22. George goes off to Johnson and the Clocker. I'm going to skip some. They are attacked. Let's see. Skip 23. Go to 24, actually. Either I'm missing a bunch of highlighting or I'm skipping a bunch intentionally. I think I'm skipping a bunch intentionally. Go to, actually, 20, which chapter is that? 28, page 213. Johnson is seriously wounded, and he and George and the clocker are talking. And Johnson thinks he's dying, says what a great city it is, and George says, I don't know. And Johnson says, I do, child. You will do it or die trying. You have the doggedness and grit that has ever been the mark of the true Londoner. This is a city of liberty made by free men for free men. It is not a city that knuckles under easily to oppression. Why, it is not long since that even kings had to ask leave to enter it. You will liberate it from this time-frozen blight, George. You will free it again. Okay? He's talking about there the characteristic, or what's popularly called this British stiff upper lip mentality. That no matter what people throw at the English, they get back up and just keep on going. I experienced this summer of 2005. I was getting ready to go over to teach my Harry Potter course in London. And July 7th, which was the day we were flying over, I woke up to a phone call about 6 o'clock in the morning. And it was the person in charge of study abroad at MTSU calling me and saying, don't do anything. Plan is to still go. And I'm groggy. I'm like, what are you talking about? You don't know? Know what? Turn on the news. Turned on the news, and it was being reported that London had had a terrorist attack. The tube system and bus lines had been bombed. 4 different instances, locations. 58 people killed, etc. They didn't know how many people were dead at that point because they hadn't gotten to some of the carriages in the underground. It took them hours to get to a couple of these. Okay? So we were told, everything's on hold, but as of now, you're still flying out later that afternoon. Like 10 hours later. Okay? So we do fly over, and the next day we arrive in London. I think I might have mentioned something about this before. And we arrive in London, and it's a London I had never seen before. I'd been to London by that time 5 or 6 other times. But we got to Heathrow Airport, and there were cops everywhere. And I don't just mean your average run-of-the-mill cops. I mean cops walking down the concourses, 3 and 4 abreast, semi-automatic weapons, full flak jackets, fingers on the trigger guard, and not smiling. See, cops in England are usually smiling, happy people. They're nice, they're friendly, unless there's something bad going on. Then we get into London itself, and that afternoon, I go out for a walk, and I go down, I think it was to Oxford Street, the busiest shopping area in London. It's like Saks Fifth Avenue in New York, if you've ever been there. And again, there are cops, semi-automatics, walking 4 abreast. Okay, walking 4 abreast is like this much space on a sidewalk that is this wide. And not just 4 in an hour, but 4 and then 100 yards away, another 3 or 4. And then looking up on the sides of buildings, because the next day I went down into central London, down to the area of Whitehall where the government offices are, and seeing snipers, actual snipers, on the corners of buildings. Okay? And yet the papers are all about, do they really think they can scare us? Do the terrorists really think they're going to achieve some kind of goals? Okay? In that year, that was 2005, so that was the 60th anniversary of the end of World War II. Okay? Well, every year they have Remembrance Day. Remembrance Day is actually in November. That's for the end of World War I. But they have another VE Day for Victory in Europe Day, which they still celebrate in early August. Okay? And you see these men dressed in their uniforms from 1945. These old white-haired guys and these women in their uniforms from the 40s. And they're giving interviews to journalists and such saying, we beat the Jerrys. Do you think these terrorists think they're going to beat us? We whipped Hitler's you-know-what. Osama bin Laden doesn't scare us. It's that attitude. Okay? That's what Johnson is talking about there. Okay? This is a city of liberty made by free men for free men, etc. Okay? George's arm disappears. It becomes entirely made of stone. And let's see, we're going to skip some again. I don't want to skip too much because we won't have anything to talk about on Tuesday. Let's pick up with, actually, let's stop there because there's a part I know that I'm missing. Yeah, we'll stop there because we're going to have to back up because there's a passage I'm looking for and I apparently don't have it marked that I do want to talk about. So we'll stop there. Keep an eye on, if you're interested in starting early,